Welcome. This is Matt McQueeny with Akshay and Kamruz, who are freshly back from SUGCON Europe 2022. And Cam liked it so much, he's still over on the, I guess is it still Europe? I'm not sure. In the
It's
UK,
Europe. It's just not the EU.
just not the EU.
Yeah.
So, Cam, first off, what was it like? I think that was the first in-person event in 3 years. What was that like?
Yeah. It was the last in-person event was in Symposium 2019, right? That was in Florida, was it? I can't even remember where it was. It was so long ago. I can't even remember
Yeah.
where it was, but I think it was Florida. Yeah, it felt a bit strange. It felt really, really great to see a lot of faces. It felt great to speak with people, but yeah, it was just getting back into swing of things, and obviously at the tail end of hopefully the pandemic, it did feel a bit strange going from all the restrictions we had to actually, socializing.
Actually, I keep thinking about the fact of how much the marketplace has shifted in those 3 years. And I know that Sitecore has had virtual events, but when you're looking at the 2019 in person and then what came out in 2022, it's almost emblematic of the change, right? Like you needed that gap of time because there's been such a change in the marketplace. Was that a big part of the event?
Yeah, no, I think one is it was the first in-person event. SUGCONs are a little bit different. I know they're very developer and partner focused, but it's also a free time for Sitecore to test out their presentations leading up to the symposium, right? So it was, yes, they've been really busy. They announced quite a few things, which are very in a composable way, playing nice with their neighbors and things and all. So there were a lot of announcements. They were kind of nice. The best part of the SUGCON is you can actually spend time with the product teams, talk to them. They're more than willing to share their information with you. So it was nice.
So Camruz, when I think of this, I've been thinking of the things I love, like Apple products, right? And they have like the Worldwide Developer Conference, and then they have product launches. This seemed equivalent to almost a developer conference a little bit, and then also the things that come out tend to be the company's sense on the progress and what they're promoting, and then you kind of have the shows after where people say, "Oh no, it's really like this." What what parts really stuck out to you that you think are kind of lasting announcements?
Well, SUGCONs have always been a bit different to, like you say, with the Apple equivalent of the Apples, they have been more of the developer focus, the community focus, right? It's a community organized event as opposed to Symposium, which is the official company event, right? So I think there is a bit of a different take. We obviously have like the keynotes and the direction from the company, which is really, really great. That they get so involved with these community events. I think unless somebody's been living under a rock for the last like 2-3 years, the biggest takeaway is just composable. Like the full-on focus on composable. But I think the really interesting we've been in the composable game for a long time, right? Since before it was a thing in the Sitecore space. But I think the interesting thing from Sitecore's take is how they're trying to bring the different products of composable and kind of bring those together so they work more seamlessly and almost like a single product, but still remaining headless and SaaS and separate products still.
Akshay, is that a difficult line to toe?
From a what perspective?
Trying to be headless while kind of being all the products in one place?
Yeah. I mean, it's a different mindset, right? Like I think it was Kamruz and I did our talk, which kind of addresses some of these, where you're going from a monolith to a composable, and how does it affect an architect and a developer? And I don't think it's any different to a marketer or another professional. Is how do you look at things? How are things? The best of breed or reusability, or how things get affected. So yeah, it is a challenge for companies to move from monolith to composable for sure. But Sitecore announced quite a few things, and with all of their previous acquisitions, right? Sitecore Send, Personalize, AutoCloud, and now with Reflection and stuff, there's so many other composable pieces they are adding, which, you could buy one or all of them. It really depends on your needs.
Kamruz, when both from the main stage talk that you and Akshay gave, and then from the messaging of composability that was throughout the conference, what were you hearing from some of the other tacticians of Sitecore? I mean, Konobos has been, working in the headless world in other ways through this all, so it's probably not as much a shock. Were you finding shock? Were you finding comfort and understanding?
I think the shock factor has kind of subsided a bit. I think now it's more of a, how do we go about this new world? How do we work in this new world? How do we replicate some of the things we were doing, and what do we not replicate because they just didn't work so well? So I think that shock factor has subsided a bit, and Sitecore and the community at large, and hopefully ourselves, have done some good jobs in evangelizing the headless approach, the Jamstack approach, and the different ways of working. I think there's still a lot more to do. There's so many ways you can work with headless, and obviously different teams will work differently. So I think that's what people are trying to figure out right now, is how does that work for us? How will it work for our customers? How will those integration pieces work? What do we keep? What do we not keep? How do we build up that knowledge? How do we build up their capabilities?
Akshay, when you look at Sitecore's announcements, acquisitions, there's some elements that are maybe more headless. There's some that are still kind of monolith. Do you think that the education piece that Kamruz said is still going to be extremely crucial for months and years to come about what this is, evolution as well? And did they do kind of a good job at explaining that, do you think?
Yeah, I think, from experience, right? It takes months to educate leaders and industry professionals on composable. It's just a different way of thinking. Why do we have to make the change? From an education perspective, I think it's a start. It's a never-ending process. So education for me means educating not just the customers, but also the salespeople, the marketing people, everyone who deals with the customer directly or indirectly, right? And I don't think it can be done in a short period of time. It's the number of people you reach, the turnover, re-educating will take years, but it's a start for sure.
And Cam, is there maybe still potentially a place for, not to say a full monolith, but a less headless world for the immediate couple of years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think the monolith or the traditional CMS is going to disappear overnight. For some customers, it makes a lot of sense to keep those systems. They're well versed in those systems. It works extremely well. They have a lot of integrations, and their dev teams are working well with these systems. But for others, they're just not using all of the features, or it's difficult for their dev teams to work with those systems. So it really will depend customer to customer and project to project even. And it's just the same as composable, because one composable stack is going to work for one specific customer, and it might not necessarily work for another, right? So I think it really will depend customer to customer. But from a Sitecore perspective, they are obviously full force forward into headless and these new systems that they've built. But equally, they know that there are customers on their traditional system, on their traditional XP or XM, and they are bringing updates and cloud versions of Sitecore XM, right? They are launching something called Cloud XM, which will provide a SaaS-based XM instance. There was demos of this where how easy it was to spin up. Unfortunately, the demo got through a little bit unforgiving, and the full demo didn't work. But they could spin up a cloud instance of XM, which you could then use as a headless CMS. There's GraphQL endpoints that they're adding to a lot of their systems. The cloud versions are adding webhooks, for example, as well, which their traditional CMS didn't use. They've got different eventing systems and APIs for controlling some of that management API, which the traditional system again didn't. So I think there will be these dual tracks that the traditional customers will be able to utilize for, and at least it's an upgrade path for them, or a slower migration path if they need it, if they can't jump onto a fully headless SaaS instance.
You've both been very involved in the Sitecore community over a decade now. Akshay, you always want people to be your friends. What was it like for you? Because I asked Cam at the beginning, but what was it like for you with the 3-year difference? Did it feel like putting on an old pair of shoes again?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of familiar faces, right? So I think I was telling someone in the company yesterday, it was like an unlimited amount of hugs. So we haven't seen each other in so long. It was really nice to just hang out with a bunch of friends. And that's what the Sitecore community is, right? It's different than any other community. I will say that every single day. It was nice to be amongst friends. We had a lot of fun. We ate some good food. We talked about a lot of things. So it was a really good get together.
And I want to ask you both this. I'll start with Cam. I saw the pictures, and I know we'll see the video. That was a pretty cool, big-looking stage with an enormous #SUGCON thing behind it, and like an amphitheater. I'm interested from going from this remote thing. I mean, always remote company, but to not speak in front of people like that. Forget seeing people, but to speak in front of people, was that an easy transition back into that, or was that a little like striking?
It's always striking, especially being up on the big stage. Speaking in front of people is always, it's always. I'm not a natural extrovert. Always struggle, but we rehearse, we practice, and we just got to kind of head down. What does help, of course, is the community being so tight. You go to these events, it is meeting up with old friends. So that really starts to put you at ease, and it's not then giving a talk at a conference, it's just talking with friends.
Yeah, Akshay, I know that with the innovations within this company that they've already gotten emojis out of your dance thing on the stage. But how did it feel being up there again?
No, it was good. Yeah, and it's always like scary, right? Yeah, you do want to deliver your talk, but at the same time, you don't know what's going to happen, what's going to fail. So until you're done with the talk, you're always pressured in a way. But once you're done with the talk, you're like, okay, I'm done now. I can relax. But it was nice. It was good. There was a lot of like Dave, the CTO guy, was in our talk. All of our friends who love to give us trouble with questions were in the talk. So it was kind of nice. It was good to get out there and give the presentation. We got a lot of good feedback from everyone who was there.
Yeah, I that was one of the highlights for me. As I was on the evening of the first day, I was out at the reception, and David Flanagan, who's the CTO, was out there and just got chatting to him. And he's like, "Oh, was that your talk? It was really great. Really enjoyed it." I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm glad I didn't see you out there while we were giving the talk." And I found out afterwards. But that was fantastic. I don't think I've ever had that before. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. To that point, when you're putting it together, is there a concern that something you're going to say might be taken the wrong way on a main stage, or do you work with them a little bit on it? Akshay, how do you feel about that?
When you speak the truth, you don't have to worry about things. No, it's always trying to be kind, right? Like you're trying to represent your fellow developers, fellow architect, the community itself. So, and people depend on you to share the true, honest, opinion of what you do based on the experience you have. And I think we've been doing composable stuff for the past couple of years, so we had a leg up on a good number of people. So people did come to the talk because they were very curious as to what our take is, because we've been doing Sitecore for a long time, and then we've gone composable. So I think it's just giving the information, being factual, very objective, as well as being kind in doing so without putting someone down. I think people have an appreciation for that.
Yeah, I think as long as you can present the good, the bad, the ugly, it's people appreciate it. If you're just presenting all the positives, or you're taking a very bad take on it and presenting all the negatives, it's not a good look, right? We try to be fair, we try to be objective. We know there's positives and we know there's negatives, and we try to present those in a factual manner. I think people appreciated that.
Well, and to finish the mission, to keep exploring, right? I mean, it must have felt good to be on stage, having taken a little bit of a pivot, a dual track there into the headless world, maybe before Sitecore quite did. It must have been cool to be on stage, to be in a position where that's somewhat rewarded by doing that, and that you can still all be friends, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well,
but there is a lot of nice stuff coming out from Sitecore's
go for it.
Presentation from Sitecore's roadmap. I think that was quite interesting for me. They've got some really neat stuff coming up. They have a portal coming up which kind of ties together all their products, so you're not trying to scramble around trying to find different bits. Content Hub. There's a Content Hub headless version, like a Content Hub Lite, coming out. And speaking with the team there, they'd kind of taken a UX first approach to that. Content Hub is great, but it's for a headless CMS, it's a little bit clunky. So they took a different approach to it and went for a UX first approach, and then built a UI on top of Content Hub using the existing APIs. And that looked more like what we're used to as a headless CMS. Similar to something like Contentful, for example, right? And that looks really interesting. I think that is going to be a real contender in this headless CMS space, if from what we saw, if that's what they end up with. There was some talk of Sitecore Pages, which will allow users to go in and compose pages using their Symphony tool, which is a new front-end as a service tool they're building, which will be neat because it's like the equivalent of the experience editor, which everybody from the Sitecore world is so used. There was a bunch of other things on there around personalization at the edge, especially, which will mean that you'll get like lightning fast personalization, globally scaled. Sitecore Components was another interesting one, right? So you got, again, drag and drop kind of experience builder, allowing you to collaborate across different projects, reusability of components. I think the most interesting thing was a slide. I think actually you tweeted this out as well, right? They had a slide on there saying, we are composable from any data set. And on that slide, it actually had logos of, obviously, Sitecore, but also Contentful and Kentico Content.
Yeah.
And which makes sense, right? All of these systems are purely API driven. It doesn't really matter which system you are getting the data from. If I was building this in Next.js, for example, I could bake that logic into my code and pull from those different systems. But Sitecore is saying, right, we're just going to open this system up and, hey, you're using Composable. We know you're going to be using different systems, maybe using multiple headless CMSs, and we will play nice with all of them. And I think that's probably one of the first times I've had Sitecore take such an open approach to their products.
Yeah, no, also to mention is reflection. So the search experience and also the identity service they were talking about. So yeah, there's a lot of announcements. So there's a lot to unpack, but I think at Symposium you'll have enough time to spread that across and get enough knowledge about all of them.
Awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on and talking about it, guys. We'll have lots of content about it, I imagine, in the next couple of months, and then culminating with Symposium in Chicago in October.
Yeah, I'm super excited to actually get my hands on some of these previews and start playing with us. It's really, really exciting stuff.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.